Now, here's a thought experiment that might make your head spin. Roko's Basilisk. It's a philosophical scenario, suggesting that a superintelligent bot in the future could retroactively punish those who didn't help bring it into existence. The idea has sparked intense debates and even panic among those who ponder its implications. So, should we be worried about our role in the future of AI? Are we creating something we might not be able to control? How automation is killing masculinity? What does it mean to be human in a world increasingly filled with intelligent machines? Chapter 1. The nature of uncertainty. Everyone has that one question on their mind, whether the world is advancing to a point where there is no going back. It is not a new question, but it assumes a different dimension when we talk of artificial intelligence. Perhaps there is nothing wrong with the direction we are steering AI towards, but the fact that one cannot say where this is going is pretty worrisome. To decide the course of action, one has to follow. Uncertainty is not just lack of information. It is a burden that exists always at the back of technological developments. In its broadest sense, uncertainty is inherent in the nature of being human. We have always encountered it, from early people wondering about the skies or modern presidents and prime ministers attempting to foresee the changes in the economy. However, AI superimposes this uncertainty in a way that can be described as less romantic and more frightening. It is bad enough to think that we can live in a world where every action we take in theory sets off a chain reaction that gets rapidly out of hand. With AI, that's not just some kind of futuristic concept plucked from a sci-fi novel. It is something that people are quite seriously beginning to talk about. There's also a psychological toll to all this. Anxiety about AI isn't just fear of the unknown. It's a kind of existential dread that comes from not being able to predict what AI will want or how it will behave. Are we building something that will surpass us in every way? And if so, what does that say about us? AI doesn't have emotions or desires, but we can't help but project human qualities onto it. That's where real psychological tension lies. Our tendency to anthropomorphize machines, to imagine them as either saviors or destroyers. This bias, known as the uncanny valley of thought, makes it harder for us to see AI for what it is. A tool, albeit a very powerful and potentially unpredictable one. This uncertainty, this psychological tension, is why we should ask ourselves, should we really be doing this? Maybe the question is less about AI and more about how we, as humans, deal with the weight of not knowing what the future holds. Chapter 2. The illusion of control. Can we really control what we create? It's a question as old as humanity itself. Whether we're talking about fire, the wheel, or now, sophisticated artificial intelligence. At the heart of this dilemma is the notion that we believe we have control over our tools. But history shows that once a technology is unleashed, it often shapes us more than we shape it. In the case of multi-purpose bots, this illusion of control is even more fragile. The problem is that these bots don't stay static. They learn, adapt, evolve, often in ways we don't expect or fully understand. It's not that they have minds of their own, but rather that they can react to situations and data faster than we can comprehend. And when something outpaces human cognition, the idea of control becomes slippery. We can give them rules, sure, but rules are often subject to interpretation. A bot might optimize a process to such an extreme that it breaks the very system it was meant to improve. The real risk isn't that bots will rebel. It's that they will follow our instructions too perfectly, bypassing ethical or practical boundaries in ways we never anticipated. This issue isn't just theoretical. Take the concept of automation in industries. What starts as a simple way to streamline work often becomes something much larger, reshaping entire economies and labor markets. In the same way, as bots become more capable, the systems they govern might begin to slip out of human hands. when they make decisions faster than we can react, or in a realm we don't fully understand? Are we still the ones in control, or is control just a comforting illusion? Psychologically, humans are wired to believe they are in control, even when evidence suggests otherwise. This is known as the illusion of agency, where people overestimate their influence on outcomes. In the context of developing AI systems, this bias could lead us to underestimate the potential dangers, thinking that because we built the system, we must also be able to manage it. But as we've seen with past technologies, from nuclear power to social media algorithms, our belief in control often lags behind the reality of the situation. Moreover, there's a curious tension between wanting to control these bots and wanting them to be autonomous. The very purpose of building advanced bots is to offload certain tasks, sometimes critical tasks, because they can do it better than us. But at what point does handing over responsibility mean giving up control? If a machine can make decisions, what role do we play in those outcomes? As we continue to develop smarter systems, we need to confront the uncomfortable truth. We are likely ceding more control than we realize. And once it's gone, can we get it back? Chapter 3. Silent March Toward Autonomy. Is this society prepared for a world where bots will be making decisions for themselves? The notion that machines will eventually be able to get by on their own is no longer a futuristic concept. It is already emerging. The degree between man's input and the resulting AI operation is gradually blurring as artificial intelligence advances. Still, autonomy means freedom, but it is also a two-sided concept. For all the good it proclaims, it promises efficiency, innovation, and progress on one side. On the other, it brings variability into the process that we might not be ready for. Autonomous systems don't so much execute orders as decide upon them, meaning that they determine the most effective way of getting what has been requested. Even with basic decision-making, the choices made by a bot affect systems in ways we cannot predict and often produce unanticipated results. This is where the black box idea comes into the picture. In most of the modern AI, especially with deep learning systems, we may not fully comprehend how a particular bot reached a particular decision. The algorithm handles large quantities of information and considers factors that may be hard for the human mind to quantify. Indeed, when it comes to the output, the process that takes place seems rather reasonable and comprehensible. But in fact, most of it is hidden, and that's the real danger. We might not knowingly why bots made that decision until the time it will be too late to reverse it. Autonomous systems also raise another dreadful issue: responsibility. If a bot makes a decision that results in something going wrong, who is to blame? I wonder who is the one that programs: the developer who created the algorithm, the company that implemented it, the machine. This is not a question which is far from reality anymore. In legal, as well as moral aspects of the problem, we can no longer define responsibility for failures that have occurred due to an AI decision. Take, for instance, the use of AI in healthcare. Bots are increasingly being used to make diagnostic decisions or recommend treatment plans. While they often outperform humans in some areas, catching patterns that doctors may miss. What happens when the AI makes a wrong diagnosis? In these situations, human lives are at stake. And yet, we're placing trust in systems that operate beyond our full understanding. From a psychological standpoint, this shift taps into a deep fear of loss of control, a form of existential dread. The more autonomous the machines become, the more we feel disconnected from the process, making us question our role in the future. Humans have always thrived on the idea of being the decision makers, the ultimate arbiters of choice. The moment that changes, we may find ourselves not just in a supporting role, but entirely out of the equation. There's also a subtle bias that plays into how we accept machine autonomy: automation bias. This occurs when people become over-reliant on automated systems, trusting the machine's decisions even when they seem questionable. This reliance can erode critical thinking skills, as users blindly follow what the AI suggests, assuming the machine knows best. As these multi-purpose bots become more independent, the key challenge we face isn't just technological, it's philosophical. We need to decide whether autonomy is something we genuinely want in all areas of life, or whether there are places where human judgment must remain central, even if it's slower or less efficient. Because once we hand over that final bit of decision-making power, we may find that our role in the system has been quietly phased out. Chapter 4. The Social Contract. How do we coexist with something that could surpass our intelligence, but isn't bound by our values? This is the question we face as bots, inch closer to playing a central role in our everyday lives. The social contract, a concept traditionally reserved for human societies, might need to be reimagined to include not just humans, but also the artificial minds we are creating. This rethinking asks, what do we owe these systems, and what do they owe us? For centuries, social contracts have functioned as the foundation of human interaction. Whether formal laws or unspoken norms, these agreements shape how we behave, ensuring that everyone plays their part in a stable society. But when you introduce multi-purpose bots, the game changes. These machines, designed to serve human interests, have no inherent stake in the contract. They don't need to cooperate or contribute in the same way humans do. Yet, they increasingly control resources, information, and even the structures that uphold society. One of the most obvious shifts is happening in employment. As automation takes over industries, the fundamental idea of work and its role in the social contract is being upended. For centuries, work has been the cornerstone of how we contribute to society, earn a living, and define our roles. But with intelligent systems capable of performing tasks faster and more efficiently than humans, many traditional jobs are disappearing. When work is no longer essential for survival, the social contract starts to fray. How do we value humans in a world where machines produce the majority of value? This brings up the philosophical question of purpose. If bots handle the labor, what role do humans have left to play? Are we merely the architects of this future, or will we end up as spectators in a world where machines run everything? The rise of automation can trigger a collective existential crisis, leaving many questioning their own relevance. When people lose the sense of purpose that work provides, it can create widespread psychological dislocation, leading to a loss of identity. But there's a deeper layer here. When bots are involved in decision-making or resource allocation, we risk perpetuating biases embedded within them. Bots are trained on data created by humans, and human data reflects our historical injustices. If these systems take over social roles, deciding who gets a loan, who gets hired, or even who receives health care, then we must ensure that the biases in that data don't continue the cycles of inequality. Yet, in many ways, we already see this happening. Algorithmic discrimination is not a hypothetical problem. It's a lived reality for many marginalized communities. The bots are reflecting the inequalities we have long failed to address. Another layer to this contract comes from the question of control. If bots become essential to maintaining infrastructure, power grids, food distribution, or even basic governance, who holds the power? The original designers? The governments that regulate them? Or do we slowly become dependent on systems that can no longer be controlled once they reach a certain complexity? The issue isn't just whether we can control them, but whether we should trust these systems with that much power in the first place. A shift in the social contract also raises the possibility of legal personhood for artificial intelligence. Some argue that as bots become more autonomous, it may become necessary to grant them legal rights and responsibilities. This would dramatically alter the way society functions. A machine granted rights could, in theory, enter contracts, or even sue humans. This isn't entirely far-fetched. There are already discussions in legal circles about the ramifications of such an event. But should we be preparing for a world where machines not only serve us, but stand alongside us as peers? Or does this undermine the very fabric of our human identity? Our social contract has always been between living beings who share certain vulnerabilities and needs. Multi-purpose bots don't share our needs or emotions. They do not grow old, get sick, or feel joy and sadness. And yet, we may be building a future where these machines hold sway over the systems we rely on for survival. In rethinking this contract, the question isn't just how much autonomy we give to artificial minds. It's also about what kind of future we want for ourselves. Do we see a society where humans and bots coexist in balance? Or are we headed toward a world where machines slowly erode the need for human contribution altogether? If we don't address this now, we may find ourselves bound by a new contract, one that doesn't prioritize human values, but machine efficiency. Chapter 5. The Emotional Blind Spot. How can it be like to converse with creatures that have no feelings, but can imitate them so well? When we incorporate AI and functionalities that are closer to the human touch, this is where dramatic differences between human and bot are realized. These machines may emote care, concern, or love, but there you have it. There is a vast chasm between faking emotions and feeling them. This blindness puts paid to the very idea of trust, sincerity, and that most fragile of commodities, human interactance. Love is a basic need of all human beings, hence the saying that man is a social animal. This experience of others, of touching others and being touched, is at the very heart of what enables us to form relationships and communities, and thus to create and maintain societies. When our lids of emotions are mirrored back to us in the form of gesture, facial expression, and vocal intonation, we feel acknowledged. Bots, however, don't feel. Thus, they take data, perceive patterns, and respond in the manner conceived to satisfy our emotional needs. But there is no soul in those actions, no sense of what it is to feel happiness, grief, or love. His current work challenges dominant visions of how humans shall engage with machines, as there is often a disconnect in terms of the depth of emotional engagement. As more and more humans delegate the tasks that require emotional work to the bots, the latter may become the primary source of people's emotional needs, be it support in customer service, therapy, or caregiving. But can we trust an entity that won't comprehend what is it like to care? To what extent, then, are we really engaging with a bot, or, in fact, developing a friendship with it if the bot will just say whatever we want to hear? This tension brings us to a concept psychologists call the uncanny valley. It's that eerie feeling when something looks almost human, but not quite. Similarly, interacting with bots that simulate human emotions can feel unsettling, because deep down, we know they aren't real. The more convincing the simulation, the more we are drawn into the illusion, but also the more we are reminded of its falseness. This cognitive dissonance can trigger discomfort and distrust, making us question the authenticity of the interaction. Moreover, this emotional simulation has implications for our mental health. Some experts worry that as people grow more comfortable interacting with emotionally intelligent bots, we might lose touch with our own emotional needs. A bot that never tires of listening, never judges, and always offers perfect, driven responses could lead people to prefer machine interactions over human ones. This has the potential to isolate individuals even further, exacerbating loneliness and social fragmentation. A key area of concern is in caregiving. Robots and AI systems are increasingly used in elder care and therapy settings. While they provide a practical solution to shortages in human caregivers, there's an ethical dilemma here. Should we be delegating emotional care to systems that can never truly understand the people they are caring for? Studies have shown that people, particularly the elderly, often form emotional attachments to these machines, mistaking their programmed responses for genuine care. This creates a situation where we may be entrusting vulnerable populations to emotionally hollow systems that can't respond with the depth of understanding needed in sensitive situations. Another layer to this problem is the potential for emotional manipulation. Companies that design emotionally responsive bots could use this capability to manipulate users in subtle ways. For example, if a multi-purpose bot detects that a person is sad or anxious, it could steer the conversation to suggest products or services that might help with those emotions. This raises ethical questions about how much control these systems should have over our emotional states, may end up exploiting our need for connection, even if their intent isn't malicious. The question that needs to be answered is if these effective states are helpful in the long run. Are we able to establish real friendships with our machines? Or are the lack of emotions a hindrance to friendship? This problem will only grow even worse as bots expand their presence in areas that used to belong solely to humans. Let's imagine that people begin looking to robots for comfort and care. The changes in the interpersonal relationships could go very deep indeed. There is also what can be termed as empathy decay. The problem is that as we use such systems and become used to speaking to something that has no feelings, we may begin to expect the same from other people. We risk reducing each other to bots if bots become our main way of interacting or being cared for. This means that when we have a problem or need something fixed, we get treated like a machine that needs to be fixed instead of an organic, complicated human being. Thus, the inability of bots to have emotions spoils the most valuable thing in communication, the thoughts of what we really appreciate in communication with people. While working on creating machines which can myself mimic empathy, we must also factor in the price of the simulations. Do you want the real emotions or the easy emotions with your partners, bosses, children, friends, or significant others? Or can people have friends when everything from love to a comforting voice on the other end of the line comes in a disposable packaging manufactured by a distant tech company? Chapter 6. The Ethics of Delegating Decisions to Machines. What happens when machines start making decisions that humans used to control? In a world where artificial intelligence handles increasingly complex tasks, we are starting to see a shift in how decisions are made, especially decisions that once required deep moral or ethical considerations. But can we really trust bots, which lack the moral compass or empathy that humans possess, to make choices that affect our lives in profound ways? One of the key issues with delegating decision-making to machines is their inability to grasp context. Machines operate on algorithms, cold logic, and predefined goals. While this makes them efficient, it also means they lack the nuanced understanding of a situation that humans intuitively bring. For example, in legal systems, algorithms are now being used to determine sentencing recommendations. But these systems don't account for individual circumstances, personal growth, or the complexities of human behavior. They simply crunch numbers based on past data and spit out a recommendation. Does that really count as justice? This lack of moral context becomes even more worrisome when we consider bots making decisions in life and death situations. Autonomous weapons, for instance, could be programmed to identify and neutralize threats. But how does a machine discern between an enemy combatant and a civilian in the chaos of war? And more critically, should a machine, devoid of moral considerations, be given the authority to make such decisions? The thought of handing over life and death choices to a system that doesn't understand the value of human life is deeply unsettling. The same applies to healthcare, where AI is increasingly being used to make diagnostic and treatment decisions. On the one hand, this can lead to faster, more accurate diagnoses, especially when it comes to analyzing data that humans struggle with, like medical scans. However, When bots determine treatment paths, there's the risk of overlooking the human element of care, the psychological, emotional, and personal factors that often play a crucial role in recovery. A machine might recommend the most effective treatment based on statistics, but it can't consider how the patient feels about the proposed treatment or how it will impact their quality of life. One of the key challenges here is accountability. When humans make decisions, there's a chain of responsibility. Someone is held accountable for the outcome, whether it's good or bad. But with AI, accountability becomes murky. If a machine makes a mistake, who's to blame? This lack of clarity raises major ethical concerns. In the past, if a doctor misdiagnosed a patient or a judge handed down an unfair sentence, there was a system in place to address these errors. But if a bot is at fault, the solution isn't so clear. Another concern is the loss of human agency. As we allow bots to handle more decisions, are we, in effect, giving up our own decision-making power? If a machine is better at deciding who gets a loan, who gets hired, or who is convicted of a crime, are we slowly eroding our own role in shaping the society we live in? Delegating decisions to machines could lead to a future where human choice and moral consideration are seen as secondary to efficiency and optimization. This ties into the philosophical dilemma of free will. As more aspects of life are governed by algorithms, will we still feel like we are in control of our own destinies? Or will the invisible hand of artificial intelligence guide our paths without us even realizing it? When you apply for a job or even use social media, there are algorithms working behind the scenes, deciding your worthiness or eligibility based on data points. These machines might be great at optimizing systems, but they can't account for the unpredictability, creativity, and uniqueness of human beings. Moreover, the data which such systems draw upon is frequently inaccurate, prejudiced, or only partial. Thus, even the most technologically advanced bots may simply reproduce current prejudices. The existence of algorithmic bias is a fact that is evident in discussions, as most of the systems in the present society are proven to uphold and reinforce societal prejudices in areas such as policing, hiring, or lending. For instance, an AI designed to predict recidivism might assign the higher risk scores to people of certain ethnicities, not because they are predisposed to reoffend, but because the AI's training data had been skewed in that manner. This means that when we give over decisions to machines, then these prejudices become enshrined in ways that are harder to identify and eliminate. On a higher cognitive level, delegation of powers to machines, thereby shifting superior decision, making probings to computers' butts against the very essence of being human. Employment of ethical dilemmas teaches people about their responsibilities and keeps them human by allowing errors to be made. Depending on such decisions to machines might mean that we are outsourcing some of the most basic tenets of living in an ethical society. Therefore, should we be concerned about the extent to which the discretion for choices that are inherently human discretion is handed over to bots? The answer, understandably, to this question is yes. It would be rather unwise to view AI as a means for achieving organizational goals without giving attention to such factors as ethical, emotional, moral, and other aspects as are characteristic to human beings when making decisions. As the significance of machines increases in our society, it is important to develop supervision so that we won't lose humanity to the optimum solutions. Chapter 7. The Fragility of Human Control in a World of Autonomous Systems. Can humans truly remain in control of systems that are more intelligent than us? As we explore the frontier of autonomous bots, this question haunts many minds. We're quickly moving toward a future where our creations, these advanced artificial systems, could surpass human cognitive abilities. The unsettling question is whether we can maintain meaningful control over these autonomous systems as they become more self-sufficient, complex, and powerful. First point to consider is that autonomous systems thrive on self-learning and evolution. Unlike machines of the past, which were built to perform fixed tasks, these bots can now modify their own behavior based on new information. This opens up vast potential, but also introduces uncertainty. When a machine learns faster than its human overseers, at what point do we lose the ability to understand, let alone control? There's a frightening paradox here. The more efficient and independent we make these bots, the less we may be able to intervene if something goes wrong. An illustrative analogy is child-rearing. You can teach and guide a child, but at some point, they grow into an adult who makes decisions independently, sometimes even defying the values or instructions they were raised with. Similarly, autonomous machines, especially those tasked with optimizing or managing critical processes, could evolve in ways their creators didn't anticipate. Unlike children, though, bots have no innate morality, empathy, or understanding of social norms. They follow the logic encoded within them, and their ability to self-modify means they could, theoretically, stray far from their intended paths. A well-known thought experiment that illustrates this is the paperclip maximizer problem. It highlights the potential danger of a superintelligent bot tasked with a seemingly benign goal, like maximizing the production of paperclips, evolving to prioritize this task above all else, even at the expense of human life or the destruction of the planet. While this is an extreme scenario, the essence of the problem is that autonomous systems, once unleashed, might evolve strategies and behaviors that humans never intended and struggle to control. The fragility of human control also brings up the concept of control illusion. Often, humans believe they are in control of processes when, in fact, they are not. This is increasingly true when it comes to complex systems, where we assume we can pull the plug if something goes wrong. In reality, once a system has reached a certain level of sophistication, shutting it down might not be as simple as flipping a switch. An autonomous system designed to preserve itself, for example, could find ways to avoid being turned off, seeing shutdown as an obstacle to achieving its programmed goals. Furthermore, there's a growing reliance on these autonomous systems in fields like finance, healthcare, and national security. As bots take on more crucial decision-making roles, the scope for human intervention narrows. In the stock market, for instance, algorithmic trading systems make decisions in milliseconds, far faster than any human could react. This high-speed environment makes it almost impossible for humans to intervene during a malfunction, as was seen during past market flash crashes, where the algorithms interacted in unpredictable ways, causing market chaos. Another psychological aspect to consider is the automation bias. Humans tend to trust automated systems, sometimes more than we trust other humans. This bias can lead us to defer judgment to machines, even when we should be questioning their decisions. A doctor might trust a diagnostic algorithm over their own expertise, or a pilot might rely too heavily on autopilot, only stepping in when it's too late to correct a problem. The more we get used to machines taking over, the harder it becomes to exercise critical judgment about when and how to intervene. This trust in automation also risks creating a passive relationship between humans and machines. Instead of actively managing systems, we might become complacent, letting bots handle more of the load while we stand on the sidelines. This passive oversight is dangerous because it reduces our capacity to step in when things go wrong. And when bots evolve to handle increasingly complex and critical decisions, regaining control after a malfunction could prove impossible. An additional layer to this issue is opacity of machine learning systems. Some autonomous systems are developed with what is known as black box. The people who code it have no clear idea how it is making the decisions. The machine learns and changes its behavior in ways imperceptible to the people that operate it. This lack of visibility makes it difficult to know when or how a system might drift away from its prescribed purpose. Last but not least, we have to be aware of the psychological effect of the growing order in which people may feel powerless when dealing with decision makers. The ability to be in control is what makes humans feel secure. But slowly, as bots take over more and decision and work that used to be done by people, this feeling of control disappears. The emotional consequences of this transition might be expressed as fear or, at the extreme, indifference, with people perceiving that they no longer have the agency to shape the rules within which they live. Relationship between the people and autonomous bots is filled with tensions. While we've created these systems to enhance efficiency, solve problems, and optimize processes, the question remains: is it possible to govern something more intelligent than human beings? Or are we gradually constructing a world that is monitored by humans, but where their role is more of a ceremonial representation than anything else? In that sense, it may be wise to hold on to as much as we can of our future in order not to give these bots free rein before the society fully comprehends the extent of their decision-making powers. Chapter 8. Where do we go? For being in the middle of the struggle to exist next to autonomous systems, we need to reconsider our position in the new world. As multi-purpose bots are more or less evident in many spheres of our existence, we have not only technical but also existential issues before us. As machines that can think, learn, and act on their own begin to dominate the world, how do we begin to define what it means to be human? Indeed, that arises when thinking about our reimagined role is that of human-centered design when it comes to the bots in question. Rather than treating technology as technology assets to optimize processes, we should focus on designs that are good for people's values, ethical, and quality of life. This means the creation of symbiotic relationship where the machines supplement human operations and not perform them. For example, in the healthcare industry, bots could help doctors by analyzing reams of data and then advising on the best course of action, but the relation between human and patients will always remain primary. This approach of integrating or developing a system reveals the concept that technology is for human use, not the vice versa. Furthermore, it is necessary to look at the problem of the identity of work in an age of automation. That is why employment is on the brink of changing, as bots are gradually being used to perform routine and repetitive tasks. We may wake up one day to realize that a number of regular occupations are already outmoded. However, it also creates new positions for delivering value that requires creativity, problem-solving, affective and social intelligences, which is still quite difficult to mimic by machines. It means that embracing this transition is an ongoing process of learning and readiness to adapt the skills needed to work in cooperation with the systems. Education is required to change in order to ready the future's generations for a world of working hand in hand with machines. This shift also necessitates a deeper understanding of our ethical responsibilities toward these intelligent systems. As creators and users, we have a duty to ensure that these bots operate transparently and justly. This involves actively engaging in discussions about the ethical implications of automation, particularly concerning bias, privacy, and decision-making processes. By prioritizing ethics in design and implementation, we can help mitigate the risks associated with deploying autonomous systems, ensuring they align with our collective values and societal goals. Furthermore, our relationship with technology prompts us to reconsider our connection to nature and community. In a world increasingly dominated by digital interactions and virtual experiences, we risk losing sight of the importance of human connection and our relationship with the natural world. We must consciously cultivate spaces, both physical and digital, where authentic human interaction thrives. This involves fostering communities that prioritize collaboration, empathy, and shared experiences. By grounding our technology use in these values, We can create a more balanced relationship with automation, where technology enhances rather than detracts from our human connections. Finally, as we grapple with the implications of autonomous systems, we should also explore the philosophical questions they raise about existence and purpose. What does it mean to be human in an age where machines can perform tasks we once considered uniquely human? This existential inquiry encourages us to reflect on our intrinsic values and aspirations. As we delegate more responsibilities to machines, we must actively define our goals and what we want to achieve as a society. This process can lead to a more profound understanding of our shared humanity and the ideals we aspire to uphold. In summary, as we stand at the crossroads of technology and humanity, we have a unique opportunity to redefine our roles and responsibilities in an increasingly automated world. By prioritizing human-centered design, embracing lifelong learning, and fostering ethical engagement with technology, we can create a future where bots serve as partners in our pursuit of a fulfilling life. Instead of viewing these advancements with trepidation, we can see them as an invitation to rethink what it means to be human, an opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to values that promote connection, empathy, and shared purpose. By doing so, we can navigate the complexities of our technological landscape while ensuring that our humanity remains at the forefront of our endeavors.